Good morning,
Yeah.
Sean. How you doing,
Good
mate?
to see you. Yeah.
Welcome
Wow.
to the Master in Manhood podcast. Today I just wanted to talk to you about fatherhood and specifically fatherlessness.
Yeah.
And what do you think the impact of fatherlessness is on our current society?
That's a big question. It's a simple one to answer because it's absolutely crucial. I think there's been so much research done on how important your childhood is and your experiences in your childhood, and even if you know people who have all sorts of issues later on in life, they don't know it, but it stems from something that's happened in their childhood or an experience or bad things that have happened in their childhood. And if a child, and I mean when I say that I mean boys and girls, they don't have a father around, I think it can have a massive impact on them, and particularly boys, because you while you do everything as a child to try not to do everything different to your parents and rebel against your parents, actually your parents set a really important example. So boys seeing good fathers who care, fathers who look out for their family, fathers who provide for their family and love their wives and all that sort of stuff, they will go on and follow that example, whether they like it or not. It will be an important part of who they are as an adult.
Subconscious mind.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Whereas if the father's not there, all sorts of things can happen, I think. And firstly, you don't get that example set.
No.
Secondly, as boys grow up, they haven't got that fatherly influence, which is crucial as they start to do things, as teenagers do things that rebel and do things that probably the father would have done when they were younger, and get that guiding hand and someone to sort of say to them, sit them down every so often and say, you can't be doing that. I mean, discipline and things like that are really, really important for boys from a father. And it's not to say a mother can't do it, but I think when there's two of you and you have a father there as well, it's going to be a lot easier, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think there are. It's sort of fundamental in the upbringing of a boy. What do they say? Boys are born and men are made, and to make a man, you need a lot of people, but you need a man in there. You need a man in there, crucially, to make them and guide them. It's sort of tragic when you see boys doing things that they shouldn't be doing and not being guided, not being helped. We all make mistakes, but to learn from those mistakes, you need guidance and you need help, and a father is really, really important there.
100%. I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned mothers, because I had a conversation with my mother, because me and my mother's relationship isn't great. But I never had a father growing up, right? So everything I learned about being a man, I learned from my grandfather. So my grandfather was always there. My grandfather married my grandmother with 7 boys who didn't have fathers.
This is your mother's father?
This is
Or father's father?
No, this is my mother's stepfather.
Okay. Yeah. But is an influential man in your life.
Exactly.
He's like a rock to you, is he?
He's my example of what a real man should be. Again, he married my grandmother with 7 boys. Right? And one girl.
So she had 7 boys and one girl.
She had 8 children when he married her. Now think about
That's commitment.
Yeah. So
because a lot of men would run a mile.
No.
Well, they'd run a mile with 1 child.
3.
But 8.
Exactly. It's gone. So I always look up to him, and I said to him the other day, I said, Grandpa, you are my example of what a real man is. I said, you've done things that I would never ever do. I wouldn't even think of marriage. I wouldn't even talk to a woman romantic thoughts who had 8 children. I couldn't. How am I?
She must have been a special woman, your mum.
My grandmother is a very special woman. She is. But my grandmother has always said she could never raise her boys. She says it takes a man to raise a man.
Yeah.
And like you said, she can love them, nurture them, take care of them 100%. But who's going to guide them? Who's going to teach them how to talk to women? Who's going to teach them how to manage conflicts? Who's going to teach them how to manage finances? Who's going to teach them how to take care of the home?
Yeah.
And that's the problem I see in today's society. There's not enough mentoring going on within the family home. We send our children out and we expect school to raise them, society to raise, social care to raise them, all of these things, and then you find that boys are wilding out simply because they don't have proper examples of manhood within their home. And like you rightly said, if I said to my daughters over the weekends, because I've got a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old, and we had a 3-hour conversation. We spoke about sex, relationships, social media, all sorts. And they were doing most of the talking. And I was listening, and when I finished that conversation, I said to my wife, I said, I'm so proud of them, because the things they were telling me, my 13-year-old had an issue. I don't know if you heard about the abortion law they passed in Atlanta. So my 13-year-old had an issue with that, and she was very strong on her point, and my 16-year-old was coming from the opposite. So my 13-year-old disagreed. My 16-year-old was like, no, but the babies have a right too. And if you listen to both of them have that conversation, I just sat back and went, wow, I must have done something right. Because they were making very intelligent points. Yeah. And at the end of that, they both came to kind of a common understanding. It wasn't tearing out here. Yeah. And I thought, wow, that's beautiful. And I said to them in that conversation, I said, what do you think your example of a man should be? And they said, you, Daddy. And I was like, okay, who taught you that? Yeah. They were like, no, I have to fall in love with my dad first. And I thought, wow, this is crazy. So, like you said, it's not just...
And how did you feel? That must feel good.
I held back the tears, mate.
Yeah. Because I mean, I say, father's there for the son and the daughters. But actually, what you put in, what you reap, you get 100 times back. Because those moments, they're magical, aren't they? When they show that how important you are to them. There's no way else you can replicate that feeling. It's just...
No, as I said, I literally was there holding back the tears. Because I was just so proud of how they're growing up. And we were talking about men and relationships and all of these sorts of things, and they were saying, well, part of the problem, my 16-year-old said this, part of the problem with society in general is that we don't communicate. So you'll find that people jump into relationships before they get to know each other. My 16-year-old was telling me this, and I was sitting there thinking, okay. But the problem with boys, young men growing up, I see, and there's a lot of hype and focus being put on knife crime and violent crime and all of these things, but these things are not the cause, they're the effect of the problem, and the problem starts at home. You'll have young kids. I was on the train today at 13. She couldn't have been more than 15. She was pushing a pram, and it was a little boy, and I know she's a single mom, because I know her. So who's gonna raise that little boy?
Well, her parents maybe. Who's going to help? Is the grandfather there like your grandfather was there?
This is the problem with today's society. I grew up in Jamaica. It's different. It's
families are tight, aren't they? Yeah.
Families are tight. Like Jan will tell you, if I was mischievous on the road, it was some distant cousin who I didn't even know would beat my bum, send me home, and then my mother would beat my bum again just because somebody had to beat my bum on the street. And it was a man. So we had good examples. Yeah, we had bad examples. I've got 7 uncles who have an average of 4 children by an average of 6 different women. So that's not a great example to follow. But I genuinely think that in order to come back from this crisis, we need to understand our purposes, and we need to find out, we need to realize that without us, our boys are going to struggle. Take the man out of the home. Who do the boys have to look up to?
And I mentioned it before. I think it's so important to stress that actually, when you stick around and you build a family and you see your kids grow and you see all the rubbish stuff as well, the arguments, but you also see the good stuff. What you get from that when you have those conversations, you're talking about your girls, my son as well, my daughter who's now at university, but my son, I've been doing a lot of revision with him for his GCSEs because he's been very ill with a mental health illness, a mental illness called OCD, and he missed a year of school. He was in hospital for 6 months, and we've been building him up and trying to get him ready for these GCSEs, and we've finally got there, and he's doing his Spanish GCSE this morning, and that feeling when he rings, he may ring during this interview, he rings and he says, most of the exams he said, oh, it was all right, and I've done a lot of the revision with him, and you put that work in, and there are weekends where I'm sitting there thinking, I don't want to do any more revision. I don't even speak Spanish, and I'm learning words that I've never heard of before. Yeah. But when he rings back and says, oh, thanks for helping me out with that, because it's worth everything. I could do it 10 times.
That's it.
And I think you need to stress that, actually. Maybe when you're in that relationship as a potential father and your other half is having a baby and you think, I'm scared, I want to get out of this. Actually, if you stick around, brilliant.
Reward
It's
is
the best
priceless.
thing. You
Priceless.
you couldn't buy it.
No.
Yeah, you're right. It's priceless.
100%. And I think that's a good note to end on, mate.
Yeah.
Because if we, like you said, you reap what you sow, don't
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
And paying in. I said to my girls over the weekend, I said, because my 13-year-old, she's terrible with her phone. You know, so my 16-year-old will call me and text me like, my 13-year-old, no, she's deaf. Right? And not that it matters, because, you know, she's like yourself. My daughter she was diagnosed deaf when she was 1. And Jan will tell you, I built a company supporting deaf children. So we do extracurricular activities for deaf children and their siblings. I've been doing that for 10 years.
Yeah.
And, you know, just to see her come the other end. My daughter's big into fashion. And when I wanted to take her to dance, they said they couldn't deal with her. There was nobody to help her along because nobody could understand her, or she couldn't communicate. And but she was 2 years old and she was shattered because my daughter loved music from the day she lost her hearing. So when I walked in the house with my headphones on, she'd grab them and she'd be dancing from she was 1. So when she lost her hearing at 15 months, I thought, wow, what am I going to do now? And I literally stopped my life just like you, and I poured all my energy into getting my daughter to a point where she should be independent of me and everybody else. And now she is. So she goes to mainstream school. She's been going to mainstream school. She goes to mainstream school, and she just literally got into the Royal Dance Academy as the first
brilliant.
child to do that.
That is great.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And yesterday, over the weekend, I said to her, you know, sometimes when I text you and you don't reply,
Yeah.
I know you don't really, because she's not a telephone person, it's weird. Must be the only 13-year-old who's not with it. But she really isn't. And, you know, she said, Dad, you know, it's not because I don't want to reply to you, but you do know I love you, though. And I said, all right, that's all I need.
Yeah.
That's all I need.
Yeah, but think about it. If you weren't around, what would she be doing?
I know.
I mean, you know, you as a father and a mother, as a parent, you have a life in your hands, and you can shape that life, or you can leave it.
You can leave it.
And on its own, it's not going to flourish in the way that you can nurture it.
Struggle, 100%.
And you know, it's a challenge as a parent. You know, to start with, you're changing the nappies and doing everything, and then when they're a teenager, you have to let go, and it's hard. You have arguments and there's difficulties, but when you see them come out of the other end of the tunnel, and you think it's amazing. And as a parent as well, you find yourself doing things that you would never do. So I'm an only child, and I remember my daughter's 21 now. So when we were young parents, we were students when we had our daughter, and Lily, I remember when she was really young. You know, I just used to have my food, and it's my food. I wouldn't give it up. But I remember my wife was away, and it was just me and my daughter. She was, I don't know, 3 or 4, and we didn't. I made some pasta, but I hadn't made enough.
Right.
And I just found myself giving. She wanted more pasta, so I just ended up giving it. And I literally had a really small bowl, and she had a big bowl.
Yeah.
And I. That was the first time that happened to me. I thought, oh, you know, this sort of sacrifice that I went hungry, and you know, obviously I cooked something that I had enough in eventually, but you know, I went hungry for that meal, and she was all right. And you find yourself doing stuff that I would never do. I wouldn't even do that for my wife, but I did it for your child, because for your child they're helpless, and you wanna help, and then you continue that through as they get older. You sort of you're giving stuff. So with my son, with your daughter, you just sort of give, but you get back
100%.
100 times more.
100%.
You know
and that's the beauty of parenting.
Yeah.
It's the best job in the world.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of us men don't recognize how good a role we have, how good we have it.
Yeah.
You know, if we were supposed to raise our sons specifically in the way that we would like to live our lives ourselves, then you know, we would have a much better society, because we would be setting the example for them. That's what we're called to do. We're called to set the example, to, you know, clear the path. Like, you know, this is how you do that, son. This is how you do that, son.
Yeah, but also for girls. So you've got 2 girls.
100%.
The man that the husband that your girls. I know you don't want to be thinking about this now, but you know, when they're in their 20s, or whatever, and they're looking for their husband. But you want grandchildren. So when they're looking for their boyfriends who would potentially be their husbands. So much of that will be influenced on you, and actually, in a way, dads are almost as more, or maybe more important for girls in that sense, because girls who don't have the father around are thinking the man that they're looking for, the aspirations, the targets they set is much lower, because they're just thinking of a man who is going to come and go and isn't going to have a responsibility. But if you have a responsibility in that family, they will want a life partner who's going to be providing and going to be a rock, a cornerstone for the family. And then the guy who comes and goes, they're going to think, I don't want that because I don't expect that. I have a higher aspiration. I want someone who's going to be who's around because my dad was around.
100%. And I said to my girls over the weekend, like, look, you need to set yourself standards that you don't divert from. Right? So your standards need to be here. And whoever's coming into your life needs to be here. Right? And if they're not, then they're not that guy for you.
It's still really hard when they bring the boyfriend around. it's difficult.
Who's this guy? I'm not sure about
we need to have a chat, son.
But so thank you so much, man.
Really good to talk to you.
It was really a blessing talking to you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. And until then, see you next time.
See ya.